I understand that, but one thing that really puzzles me about this whole geographical proximity with Russia is there wasn't a lot of issues with the Balkans joining NATO. So why is that such a big issue for Ukraine? I know Ukraine is much closer to Russia culturally, even, but so are the Balkans in many ways, and that was not all this ado that we see right now.
Yeah, well, in the Balkans, very small countries joined NATO. We have Croatia in the Balkans, which has 4 million people, and we have another NATO member, North Macedonia, which has 2 million people, and we have the third one is Montenegro with 600,000 people. But Montenegro was painful for Russia. The Russians were very angry about Montenegro. Ukraine has 40 million people. Ukraine has a big military industry, and Ukraine has a lot of common history with Russia. So that's the difference. Ukraine is the biggest country of the former Soviet Union after Russia, and it was part of the Russian Empire. Montenegro or Croatia or Hungary wasn't part of Russian Empire. We have nothing to do with Russia. But they feel with Ukraine, it's also that for Vladimir Putin, it's a personal issue. For the Tsar, it's a personal issue. I write in my book how he feels about Ukraine. He feels that Ukraine is actually Russia. Many Ukrainians are outraged by this, but it's still true. We have to understand how Vladimir Putin feels. And he feels that Ukraine and Belarus, by the way, is part of the Russian world. They should be part or allied with Russia. Otherwise, he feels insecure about the future of Russia. And we don't have to accept his opinion, but we have to understand his opinion, because if we don't understand the opinion of Vladimir Putin and his people, not all the Russians think this way, but Vladimir Putin and his close allies in the Kremlin think this way, that Ukraine is part of the Russian world. And even the neutrality of Ukraine, that it's not really, it can be between NATO and Russia, even that for them is a compromise.
But it shouldn't have been the same thing, let's say, when Estonia joined NATO or Latvia. Anyhow, all those countries that are very close to Russia, to St. Petersburg, for instance, shouldn't that have threatened Russia just as much or even more?
Yes, when Estonia joined and when Latvia and Lithuania joined, Russia was, first of all, weaker. Russia had a period of weakness. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia was a weaker country. So Russia couldn't stop these countries to join. They couldn't stop. First, we joined, Hungary, Poland, and Czech Republic joined in 1999, and they couldn't stop it. Then other countries joined, but before Russia was strong enough. And again, Estonia is very close to St. Petersburg, that's true. They were very angry about Estonia joining, and they had a cyber attack on Estonia, a terrible cyber attack on Estonia, but they didn't attack Estonia directly. So that's the difference, that they were still weak to do this. But after 2008, they felt that they are strong enough to attack those countries who are not yet in NATO. So Georgia and Ukraine was promised NATO membership at the Bucharest summit in 2008. So the promise went out. I mean, it was not really a full promise. It was like one day you can be member of NATO. But for Russia, it was enough to, after a Georgian provocation, so the Georgians were not very wise. They provoked Russia, and Russia used the opportunity to defeat Georgia in 2008. And then 2014 came Ukraine. It's a very gray event, because some of Russia invaded Crimea that time 8 years ago, and Russia helped the separatists, who are mostly Russian, ethnic Russian in eastern Ukraine, to separate from Ukraine.